Thank you for joining us for another episode of She Looks Like Me. Today's guest, Miss Lillie Mae Williams. I'm so excited to chat with her about all of the amazing and dope things she's up to. And also, we're going to dive into talking about public relations for your business. We're going to talk about, the landscape of PR today. And I'm going to chat with Lillie about some helpful tips maybe to help you if you are starting a business or you're looking to work with a publicist. So let's dive into Lillie Mae's bio so y'all can put some respect on her name. As a public relations strategist and creator of the Glambitious brand, Lillie Mae has dedicated her efforts to empowering, recognizing, and supporting entrepreneurs of all facets around the country. From London to Nigeria, she has connected with women through books, master classes, and innovative events to provide them with unique resources that will elevate them professionally and personally. She's created a hub at theglamceo.com specifically for entrepreneurs to secure exposure opportunities and educational tools that will help them accomplish their dreams. She even offers licensing of her many products, which allows women to become business owners overnight and better monetize their existing business efforts. In addition, she has executed numerous community efforts for underserved single mothers and children, awarded an annual business grant, and produced the Glambitious Tour, which will include a stop at Essence Festival, among other major destinations each year. Lillie Mae has been seen on Netflix, Black Enterprise, Rolling Out, TMZ Live, Huffington Post, Control Magazine, Sheen Magazine, and XoNecole, among other esteemed media platforms. Lillie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
It is such a pleasure. I'm so excited about this chat. But first, before we start talking all things PR and glambitious, tell me what is bringing you joy these days.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely back to the basics as far as the things that bring me joy. Like I enjoy spending time in nature a lot now, so I go for walks. I do a lot of bird watching, moon gazing. Going to waterfalls, discovering that North Carolina has a lot of waterfalls here actually. So just really spending time in nature as much as possible, and then of course it brings me joy to know that my family is safe and well, and now that I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm much closer to them. So that brings me joy that I can, spend more time with family and close friends. So those are some of the things that bring me joy these days.
I love to hear it. And I also listen, we're going to give everybody your social media handles at the end of this, but I've been seeing those waterfall pictures, sis, and get your life. Okay. I love it.
Yes.
I'm like, where is the nearest waterfall? I need to find it because Lily is giving me all the inspiration.
Yes, I love finding like hidden gems. There's actually an island in South Carolina that I discovered recently, Kiowa Island, and it was so beautiful and, so peaceful. And, there were hardly anyone, on the beach. And so, that's the type of thing that brings me joy. Just, finding moments like that to reconnect with nature and have stillness and all of that good stuff.
I agree. So, before we start talking all PR talk and all that fun stuff, I want to learn how Glambitious came to be and what inspired you to start that brand.
Yeah, so when I first moved to Atlanta when I was 22 years old, I got my dream job, and then I was laid off. Then I was laid off of the next job, and then I was laid off of the next job, and that inspired me to become an entrepreneur because I was just really tired of being laid off job after job. So I became an entrepreneur, and back then, this was over 10 years ago. It wasn't as popular to be an entrepreneur, so I feel like I had to learn a lot the hard way. And so, fast forward to me starting my PR agency. I was working with a celebrity chef in Atlanta, Chef Rob, and he was opening a lounge. And so, as his publicist, my goal was to get people in the door. And so I started hosting women's events and just inviting different tastemakers, influencers, and entrepreneurs to be panelists. And so we've had a ton of amazing women participate with that, like Eating with Erica on Instagram. I remember she was a panelist. We had the actress Jasmine Burke come and participate, celebrity makeup artist Mimi J, fashion stylist Nat Taylor, you name it. I had all of these amazing women participate as panelists and share insight about their journeys. And that's what really birthed Glambitious, because I realized this was something that I could take on the road and go to different cities and really create this sense of community for women to share tips and learn things about becoming an entrepreneur and how to pursue their passions and things like that.
Yes, I think finding community on that journey is extremely important. And like you said, it used to not be so popular to start a
Mhm.
business. Like, I think a lot of times, maybe 10 years ago when you were starting a business,
Mhm.
people would be like, okay, girl, congratulations. It was like,
Mhm.
they were happy for you, but at the same time, they were also kind of giving you a little bit of side eye, like, okay, like, but if you need a job reference, let me know.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like most of my friends were in their master's degree programs back then. And so they were looking at me like, you sure you don't want to go back to school and get your master's, you know? And then, being an entrepreneur came with a lot of sacrifice. So, I remember some of my college classmates were all going on a trip to Jamaica because they all had good jobs and I was an entrepreneur. So my money was a little funny back then and I couldn't go. So, there were a lot of sacrifices with entrepreneurship and just a lot of things that I learned along the way that I now am able to share through the Glambitious platform to make the next woman's journey a little easier.
Yes, I'm all for making the next person's journey easier. So,
Mhm.
with so many people starting businesses or revisiting their business ideas, a lot has changed since the earlier days in PR. And I know for several reasons, some of those changes kind of made me decide, you know what, maybe I'm going to transition beyond this discipline in the
Mhm.
communication space. But what are the biggest changes you've seen in the PR landscape compared to maybe more traditional ways of doing it back in the day?
Yeah, so back in the day when I got started, you actually had to have like a degree in the field. Most of my colleagues that I was working with back then, we all had a degree in communications or public relations or journalism. So we had internship experiences with nationally known firms, and we really cultivated the expertise that way. And so now it doesn't seem to require as much. I see people just deciding to be a publicist without any of those experiences. So that probably is one of the biggest changes. It is, public relations being kind of flooded as far as professionals, just people waking up and decide to pursue it. And then another thing, social media, of course, over 10 years ago, social media was still kind of new and it wasn't a part of your PR strategy. And now social media has to be a part of your PR strategy. So those are definitely two of the biggest changes that I've seen now versus over 10 years ago when I was getting into the industry.
You said a whole word when you were like, people just jump
Mhm.
out the window and are a
Yeah, they are. And then one of
publicist
my pet
out of
peeves is
nowhere.
when people call it, they're like, oh, I need a PR. And it's like, no, you don't need a PR. PR stands for public relations. You need a publicist. And so just I've seen actual public relations professionals refer to themselves as a PR. And it's like, no, you're not a PR because a PR, it just doesn't make sense. PR stands for public relations. You're a public relations professional, you're a publicist. So just seeing the misterminology and just, seeing, just like I said, the change in credibility has definitely been a big, big difference from when I started over 10 years ago.
Yes, and I think with that, so to some degree, that's been kind of like a watering down of the industry, if you will.
Exactly.
And so with that, right, with the watering down on the professional side, I think on the business side too, everybody thinks that they need PR, but
Mhm.
as you and I both know, not everyone is really ready for it. So when you're meeting clients or when you're just meeting other professionals, how do you determine or how would you recommend to a business the things that they maybe need to have together before they're really ready for publicity?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are definitely several things I would say that you need, in place. Your branding needs to be in place as far as having professional photos of yourself, or if you have products, professional photos of your product. Obviously, a professional website. Some of these things sound obvious, but a lot of people start a business without having those things in line. Trademarks, legal parts of the business need to be in order. Before you put your brand out there for people to get to know, you want to make sure that it's tight on the back end. And so you want to make sure all of those things are in place. And then most importantly, you need a budget because public relations is definitely an investment. It's not like a cheap fix, so it's not anything that you just throw a couple of dollars at to see results. It's an investment and it's also, it takes time. So generally people may think, oh, I hire a publicist and that publicist is going to get me on Forbes this month. And it's like, slow down. There's a process to public relations. And so you have to be open to a consistent investment to get the results that you desire, because it's not all of the time overnight success. Sometimes it is. I've definitely worked on campaigns where it became an overnight success for the client, but usually it's not the case. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes investment. So those are some of the things I would suggest kind of having in place before you pursue having a publicist.
I agree. You raise a good point, and that is doing it for the long term. I think some people, in my experience, had been that, again, somebody hires you for PR services and they, like you said, they think they're going to be on, Hello Beautiful or In Essence tomorrow. And it's like, really, us getting started, those first 30, 60, and sometimes even 90 days is really just developing the relationships. And yes, you as the publicist have those relationships, but getting those editors, getting those writers familiar with this new brand that you're working with, getting them acclimated to why their story is important. And I think that's another thing that I would love for you to touch on for just a second, which is the idea that, okay, like for example, I had somebody come to me once and say, "Hey, I think I want you to help me like do a PR campaign." And I was like, "Okay, well, what's the story? Like what's," and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm a dope graphic designer." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, have you, and it's not to say that what have you done lately, but the PR game is kind of like, what have you done lately? What is like, what is the competitive advantage that makes Forbes want to write your story versus all of the other graphic designer stories?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's definitely not enough just to be an author. It's not enough just to be anything or just to have anything. And oftentimes, as an entrepreneur, you're so excited about launching whatever it is that you're launching, and it's great and you think it's great. So you assume that it's newsworthy. And just because you have a great product or business does not make it newsworthy. And that's where having a qualified publicist or public relations professional really comes into play, because then we can craft a story to make it relevant, to make it newsworthy. It can be great, but just not relevant, And so we're supposed to make it relevant and figure out an angle and a story to make it interesting, like you said, to give you a competitive advantage, because these days, everyone is an entrepreneur, everyone is an author, everyone is a publicist, everyone is everything, So it's like, every industry is saturated. So it does take, a very good publicist to figure out what makes you newsworthy, and that's an advantage of having someone like a PR professional on your team to get you in those doors by making your story a little more interesting, a little more relevant to what's going on like right now.
Yeah. So speaking of a good publicist, what in your mind, with all of your tenured experience, what are the traits or questions that an entrepreneur should be thinking about or asking when they are seeking out PR professionals, or when they're thinking about, what, I'm ready for my spotlight, I'm ready for my shine? What are the traits that someone should really be thinking about when they're going to hire a publicist?
Sure. So I always would suggest that you want to make sure the publicist works with people in your industry. And what I mean is, if there's a publicist that has only handled hair and beauty brands, but you're a rapper, it probably doesn't make sense to work with that publicist, because a lot of their relationships is going to be in the beauty industry. So I always suggest that entrepreneurs, work with a publicist that has other clients like them, has other clients in their industry. Me, I'm wise enough now to where I will not take a client that's outside of the scope of my personal interest. So I'm not looking to work with rappers or entertainers and things like that. But, you want to make sure that whoever you're working with, they have a history of getting similar clients' placements. And then, the second question I would say to ask them is, what have been the most recent 5 media placements that they have confirmed? And that gives you an idea to the connections that they have, the immediate connections, and you can see the links to these features and know that some of the target outlets that you're looking to get into, they have those relationships with. So those would probably be the two main things I would suggest someone kind of vet when they're selecting a publicist.
Those are both great things to think about. So, speaking of media outlets and publications, what has been your experience with the way that things have shifted in terms of a so many media publications kind of consolidating or going away. Just the maybe the shift or the change that you've seen, if you've seen a shift and change in the way like outreach happens to media professionals. What are your thoughts on that?
Mhm. Yeah, so back in the day, it was really about relationships and building relationships with these outlets. But now, there are so many new media outlets emerging every day. There's so many, which is a good thing. As a publicist, I'm excited by that. I'm excited to see people starting podcasts and blogs and magazines because it's like I have more people to pitch my client to. So, for me, it's just getting to know what new outlets are emerging on a day-to-day basis. And so doing that research to make sure my media list has the new outlets. Personally, I find value in any media outlet that caters to my target demographic. And so sometimes, a client wants to be on Essence tomorrow. But for me personally, I'm interested in interviewing with any outlet that caters to my target demographic, even if they have 10 followers, because those 10 followers can turn into customers. So as an entrepreneur, you have to widen the scope of, how you verify or qualify media coverage, because for me, I'm interested in interviewing with anyone that has a similar target demographic as mine, because I can see that, there have been times where I interview with a small outlet, but it results in a new client or customer for the Glambitious brand. So that's kind of the shift I've seen, is just definitely way more outlets to reach out to each day. New outlets are emerging, and for me, that's very exciting.
I agree. So I have the shop, and when I got the plug, or I got added to the holiday gift guide in Essence in 2017, I remember so many people were like, "Oh my gosh, girl, I know your shop is blowing up right now. You're probably making crazy sales." And don't get me wrong, like I definitely had sales that I could absolutely attribute to Essence, but it wasn't like Beyonce had like promoted my shop and now all of a sudden I was making millions of dollars. So I think sometimes people have a misunderstanding that just because you get in the big name publication, that is somehow going to lead to like your business skyrocketing and taking off. And really it's kind of a moment in time that you can ride for a while, right? But it really is kind of like, okay, they posted this article today and they have 20 more articles coming tomorrow.
Exactly. And so, what I try to do with clients is set their expectations so that they don't expect something like that to happen. That once I hire a publicist, I'm going to have $1 million in sales by the end of the month, because it doesn't always equate to sales. There's public relations, there's marketing, there's advertising. And although the three, things are in a close relationship, they're not the same thing. And so, public relations oftentimes is about branding. So you being in Essence magazine for me would be more about the branding part, like I feel like it adds credibility to your brand more so than the sales. And also, I know entrepreneurs, they're like, I want the sales, but to me, it's like as a publicist, the branding piece is just important as the few sales. And so it's not always about once I get this placement, I'm gonna blow up. And so I try to set that expectation with clients that just because you hire me does not mean your sales are gonna, like you said, increase by the end of the month. But it does mean that we're going to build your digital footprint so that when people search your name and brand, they see these credible placements. We're going to increase your brand visibility so that more customers and clients are familiar with you. So there's, other values to public relations that I try to introduce to clients so that their expectations, are set appropriately.
No, as they should be. I think setting expectations as a professional in general is extremely important. And failure to do that is where the disconnect comes in sometimes, and where people kind of get let down and like, well, I paid for, and it's like, let's be clear up front what you paid for
Correct.
and what where our focus is going to be and what we're going to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about, what to look for in a publicist. We've talked about kind of maybe what to expect when going into a relationship with a publicist. But like you said, it is an investment that does require a budget. And so for those who might not they might not be there yet, right? Like they're just getting started. They're like, I want to start doing something today, even though, my money isn't quite where it should be to hire a publicist long term. So if someone isn't quite ready for that yet, ready to work with an agency or a PR professional, what nugget or two do you have for them of ways that maybe they can start pitching their business or connecting with media professionals?
Sure. So one thing I would suggest is to at least do a strategy call with the publicist. If you can't afford to hire them full time, at least do a strategy call. That's something that I offer to entrepreneurs where I can get on a call with you for an hour and help you build out your PR strategy, help you create the pitch, like help you with some of the important pieces so that you can do some of your own work. And so if anyone is interested in that, you can just email me, pr@lilliemaepr.com, because I think it's very helpful to at least get a strategy call with a public relations professional so that you can map out some things to do on your own. But, it's very possible, to pitch media yourself. It's just all about the pitch. And that's where, at least doing a strategy call would kind of help you craft that, because it's about writing a specific type of way. But outside of pitching media, I think if I were suggesting anything, I would tell entrepreneurs to start with podcasts, because podcasts, I feel like, are more accessible. They're more likely to respond. And they're a good way to get your feet wet with media and getting interviews and getting comfortable speaking about your business and hitting certain talking points. And then the second tip I would say is to really leverage social media as much as possible. Like, there's so many different tools and things Instagram is creating on a daily basis. You have the reels, you have Instagram live. Like, there's so many facets of social media that you can maximize. I say to create a plan to maximize those. I always suggest people start like an Instagram live interview series themselves. So if you're a hairstylist and you're looking for more customers or visibility, I would suggest you interview other women in the beauty industry. That you don't have to even interview other hairstylists, but interview makeup artists, interview fashion people. That way your page is getting more visibility, because when you do an Instagram live interview, both of your networks get the notification that, hey, there's a conversation going on, and that's how they can be introduced to you. So I suggest everyone, does that. I suggest everyone use reels to promote their business and services, which is a really creative way to do that. Definitely do research through social media to see what platforms that you can pitch yourself to. Those are just a couple of, do it yourself things I think that everyone can do to kind of start the momentum for their business.
Absolutely. And I think also kind of just following, some of your favorite or like the influential media professionals that of the publications that you want to work with. Maybe it's not immediately sliding into their DM, but maybe it's, again, following them, kind of staying in tune. It's a little more of like a long game, right? Like I think following these people, becoming familiar, like even with, like you said, with this podcast, some of the people that I want to interview, I'm following them on social media right now, and I have to know when is the right time. Somebody might be going through something personally at that time. And so maybe it's not the best time to do outreach. Or maybe they are like, hey, I'm doing interviews now. So email me at whatever my email address is. And now that's your time and your shot. So I think just kind of not looking at it for the immediate results, but kind of like you said, building those long-term relationships and finding the right timing for the opportunity that you have.
Yeah, definitely. And another way to build like visibility for your business is to start speaking on different virtual event platforms, because that's a way for people to get to know you and your business is through speaking. And so I definitely encourage everyone, whether they're comfortable speaking or not, to get comfortable speaking, because no one can sell your business better than you can. So like with Glambitious, we have virtual events every few months, and women can make a small investment and speak to our network of women. So if anyone is listening and interested in speaking at a Glambitious event, definitely just visit theglamceo.com or email me pr@lilliemaepr.com, because I do think that that's a great way to build your visibility, is to speak on different platforms. And personally, anytime I see an event come through on Instagram that someone's having or that someone is a part of and it makes sense, I pitch myself for it and say, hey, I would love to speak at, this conference or this workshop. So that's another kind of indirect way of doing, or getting some PR momentum, is to start speaking on different platforms and through different virtual conferences and things like that.
That is extremely, like, I feel like that's a gem. So, definitely gonna put a footnote by that one, because I think a lot of times people sometimes, right? Like I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about that old and very archaic saying of build it and they will come. because we know that that is just not
Mhm.
always the case. And in the same thought stream,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes people are waiting for publicity opportunities to come to them. They're waiting for speaking engagement opportunities to come to them. And it's like you have the control and the capacity to put yourself out there as well.
Absolutely. Like being proactive, I think, has been one of the being proactive, being resourceful, and operating in excellence have been like the three, I guess, pillars of my long term success as a full time entrepreneur for over 10 years. And so, again, that's being proactive, being resourceful. And, those two things alone really allow you to maximize things by, like you said, not waiting for someone to knock on your door, but knocking on, other people's doors. Like I've been doing that for years, and that's how I've achieved a lot of opportunities. And another gem I would give, if someone is like a business owner and they're a decent writer, is to pitch article idea to a major outlet that you're going to write yourself. And so I've done that a couple of times to generate publicity and momentum for my own business or my own book. And I'll write an article for another major outlet, and it's like they didn't reach out to me, I reached out to them with a good idea, and they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so then my article gets placed on like blacklove.com, and then they include links to my website or links to my social media. So that's another way to pitch yourself, is to pitch an article idea to a major outlet that makes sense for you and your brand. So yeah, I definitely agree. Like, yeah, I don't wait for people to knock on my door. I'm like a door-to-door salesman.
But I think that's a really good idea though, because again, like writing that article or even putting together the pitch for that type of outreach again continues to get you more and more acclimated with sharing your expertise and positioning yourself as an authority figure. And like you said, like if you get that placement, because I feel like so much of media is decentralized nowadays, so a lot of the media publications that we've known and loved, and even a lot of the newer ones, a lot of their content is generated by quote unquote everyday people who again just put themselves out there, and not necessarily these writers and editors that are like held up in some room somewhere. A lot of it is user generated
Yeah,
content.
absolutely.
I think that is extremely dope. So tell me, I want to touch on this really quickly because I think it's one small piece of the PR world that I think a lot of people think about, especially when they're trying to maybe DIY or do their own thing, which is celebrity gifting or influencer gifting.
Hmm.
What about gifting do you share with your clients? Because sometimes, right, like those programs or those initiatives can, like, you can just run out the window giving away free product. What how do you kind of rein it in for your clients, or kind of what parameters or criteria do you give them to think about in terms of doing a gifting program and giving away products for the sake of building those relationships or getting in front of people who they want to make relationships with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Doing influencer gifting is a similar investment as, investing in a public relations expert, because it's not going to guarantee anything. Just because, I don't know, Janet Jackson wears your t-shirt, it does not mean that her followers are going to buy that t-shirt. She may get a million likes, and then you get two sales and like, oh my gosh, I just paid Janet Jackson $1 million for my t-shirt. Where are the sales? So it's I definitely, with influencer gifting, I tell people and set the expectation that there are no guarantees in it. So if you're going to do something like that, you need to have an expendable budget that you're not going to miss. So that when you invest that budget, if you don't get one sale, there's no loss. So, I definitely would say do not spend your last dime uh, doing a influencer gifting and hoping that that's going to make their millions of followers buy your product, because it could or it may not. It's a 50-50 chance. So it's really like a gamble. And so just setting that expectation, I think, helps people figure out, okay, what budget they're going to contribute to that, and comfortably, so that it's not like, oh my gosh, I gambled all of this budget and didn't get the results that I expected. So I don't think you should spend your last doing something like that, because it's not a guarantee. It's a gamble. So that would be, my piece of advice to anyone considering to do something like that. It's like, just, acknowledge that it's totally a risk, it's totally a gamble, and there are no guarantees from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of one of the things that I've found probably to be more successful in when thinking about doing gifting is like we always go for the big names. And I won't name any big names for the sake of trying to say that I reached out to them or anything. But we reach out to our it girls or men or whoever it is that we aspire and look up to. And sometimes we don't realize the value of local influencers and how nine times out of 10, those relationships are probably going to take you further in engaging them than, like you said, sending Janet Jackson a t shirt. So, kind of not discounting local influencers and like local people. So, of course, I had a chat with one of your clients, April, and she
Mm-hmm.
talked about how in the book space, building brand partnerships and, looking at like local businesses. And I think the same can be applied to publicity and getting your business out there, looking at local influencers who are probably going to do more for you anyway and are probably going to come
Mm-hmm.
back to you time and time again. If you start that relationship outright, I think those tend to be more valuable than sending your favorite R&B star trying to send Cardi B your products and thinking she's just
Mm-hmm.
gonna promote them tomorrow and now you're gonna be a millionaire.
Right. And I'll take it a step further. I've seen success in contacting non influencers, right? And so, because here's the thing when influencers promote to their audience products all of the time. So they're constantly advertising, 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 right? So even if they have a big audience, their audience can be a little desensitized to the advertisement because they're constantly being promoted this and that and this and that. But when you contact non influencers, and what I mean by that is like just a person or a professional that has a decent following and they're not always advertising products to their network. When they do advertise something, their network really responds. And so I gifted a t-shirt, for example, a Glambitious t-shirt to a young lady in Atlanta just because I just was gifting her the t-shirt. And so she, did a photo shoot with it, which I didn't expect. And she had maybe 3,000 followers. And from her posting it, I got some sales from that. And that wasn't even an intentional effort. I was just gifting her with it. And so that's was an aha moment for me because it was like, okay, it's not necessarily about connecting with influencers all of the time because anyone with a social media page can be considered an influencer because anything you post is influencing somebody, right? So maybe be more creative with how you identify the people that you do want to gift and maybe, look outside of the quote unquote influencers and look at some of the people in your network that are just, everyday people, everyday professionals and looking at their following and their engagement and seeing how you could leverage that. So that would, maybe be a step further beyond even local influencers.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, a lot of times, the people that we often look to are constantly being bombarded with these requests. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them, do a good job of filtering. Others are promoting stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When you find those people who aren't hardly promoting something and then they get behind it, people are like, oh, shoot, let me pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly.
what, if you've experienced this, because I know I have, I'm curious what you think or how do you handle or address either non-responses or hard declines, right? Like whether it's for gifting or for a pitch, like a article pitch or something like that, because it is very similar to applying for, grants or things like that. So, and obviously you're not going to get all yeses. I say all that to say you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
get all yeses. So, how do you handle that with clients who may have been had their sights set on a particular publication, or maybe they have a certain influencer that they really just wanted to connect with, and you either get non-responses or hard declines? How do you handle that with clients, or what bit of encouragement do you give them to kind of not get discouraged and to keep moving forward through that?
I always feel like a no from an outlet is not a hard no, it's just a not yet. And sometimes you have to realize that each outlet has its own agenda as far as what's relevant and what they're looking for. And so, for example, if I'm working with a t shirt brand, but Essence just featured 10 t shirt brands this month, then next month they might not be interested in featuring a new t-shirt brand, but then maybe when Christmas comes around there's another opportunity. So I always let them know that any no or decline or rejection is not hard, it's just a not yet, and that is something that we could revisit, within a month or two or three. So definitely don't get discouraged if you get declined, in any facet of entrepreneurship. You have to be comfortable with rejection, and media is no different. You get comfortable with it and you know that, okay, now is not the time for this outlet to feature me, but a few months down the road, there may be a new way to pitch it or a new angle to make it more relevant, and we'll try again. So it's just like Aaliyah. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again.
Yes, with the bars. I love it. Well, Lily, thank you so much for our chat on PR. We're not going to go just yet because I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this phenomenon that you were a part of. For those of you who don't know, Lily was one of the cast members of Netflix's super, super popular show, Love is Blind. And so really, Lily, I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about how did that process come to be and how did you enjoy I'm hoping you enjoyed the experience, but how did you enjoy it?
Yeah, so I absolutely enjoyed the experience. It was like definitely a once in a lifetime experience, so I was glad to be a part of it. I want to say I think one of my friends in Los Angeles maybe discovered the casting opportunity and shared it with me. I think that's how it happened. And so yeah, I was super single, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I should make myself available on an international platform to see if my king finds me then. So, I am definitely one of those people that, I'm open to the magic of the universe, if you will. So I'm like open to like, hey, I might find love on here. Who knows? So yeah, I went forward and, the production people, they love my personality and zeal, and I genuinely was open to finding love that way. So, it was an amazing experience. It felt like an adult sleepover is what it felt like, because we were separated from the men, so it was just women, us hanging out together, and fortunately we all got along really well, 15 women, and we lived with each other and ate with each other and played games and talked and had, just it was so much fun. It was just like a sleepover, like an adult sleepover. So I had a ball.
That's good. How long can you say how long it was as far as like what the time period was for like how long you were there?
Yeah, I can't share like time specifics, but
Mhm.
I was there long enough to have a good time and make some really great friendships with the girls.
Yes, look, when you came across that screen, I was like, "Lily Mae, I love it." I didn't know, I don't know, maybe I knew because you were posting and sharing about it, but when you
Mhm.
popped up on the screen, I was like, "That's my boo."
Yeah, it was exciting. It was a little unreal to see myself on Netflix. Like, wow, like I'm legit on Netflix. So, that goes to the point that I always make, that, when you have these big dreams and visions for your life or for your business or for yourself, you have to leave room for God to have some magic, and have some unexpected things come up, because sometimes we get so committed to how we want things to unfold, and you just never know. If you could stay fluid and stay open to opportunities, God could have something even bigger in store for you, because I just would have never imagined being a part of a show that was such an international success. Like it's really unreal. But I just encourage everyone to, stay open to possibilities. And just because something or an opportunity didn't work out in the past, like I said about the media part, it doesn't mean that God doesn't have something even more amazing down the road. And so it was definitely an amazing thing to be a part of.
I am so grateful that you could join me on this episode today. I think we have left nothing on the table and there are tons of gems in this episode. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and hopefully we can do another one, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And to anyone that's listening, please connect with me on social media at Glambitious IAM, or you can follow my personal page at I am Lillie Mae. And please visit my website, theglamceo.com, because I have a number of opportunities available for entrepreneurs, whether it's speaking opportunities, co-writing opportunities, because we have books that we allow women to be a part of and write with us and profit. We have a resale program that allows you to sell our books and keep all the profit. So there's a lot of unique programs available on theglamceo.com to help you make money and help you gain visibility and help you gain some like PR exposure as well. And then I've launched blackmensucceed.com. So if there's an amazing black man that send him over to blackmensucceed.com, because that platform is celebrating, acknowledging, and recognizing amazing black men around the globe. So those are just my final few thoughts for the listeners.
Yes, Black men succeed. Listen, now we're gonna have a sidebar when we stop recording because I didn't know about this.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Lily, so much. It has been such a joy.
Thank you.
I want to extend a warm thank you to today's guest, Lily. It is always a pleasure to catch up with you. And from one PR girl to another, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. If you are thinking about starting a business, check out glamceo.com as a helpful resource on your journey. If you are already operating a business and think it might be time to get your media shine, get in touch with Lily for that as well. She is a consummate professional and a resource you will definitely want in your corner. Thank you for tuning in to She Looks Like Me for yet another week. Can't wait to see you on the next episode.